Hello everyone, it's Paul Tilley. I'd like to welcome you back. In this unit, in this section, we're going to look at section 6.5. Now section 6.5 is equivalent value of a payment stream. Okay, so we got two or several payments that will come through, and we need to be able to figure out how much is it worth at a given point in time. How much is it worth at a given point in time? Now, this can be a confusing section. I will admit that you need to have a clear understanding of all the stuff we've covered before you actually do this, okay? So it's very important that you do all the problems and get a really good handle on it, that you're comfortable with the use of it. So essentially, let's take a look at what we got here. What we got is a couple of payments. So let's say, for example, a simple example is that you are going to have, you want to put $100 in bank now, earning 10%. How much is it worth? In 1 year. That's kind of a thing. So we've looked at that, and we've seen that we can do the future value of that and do the math on it. But let's assume that we take the same scenario. You want to put $100 in the bank now to earn 10%. Okay? I'm just scrape out this. And you also want, let's assume you're going to get $100 in 2 years at 10%. So someone's going to give you $100 in 2 years. They promised you that you're going to get this. So what we got is you're putting some money in the bank now, and you want to know what it's going to be worth in the future at some point in time. And you know you're going to get $100 2 years' time, and you want to know what it's worth at some point in time. So we got two scenarios, two streams of dollars, let's say, coming in. Let's assume is we ask this basic question: how much is this worth in 1 year? Okay? So just follow me here. Now, here's now, and you're going to put that in the bank. This is the 1 year mark. And in the 2 year mark, someone's going to give you $100. And you want to know what's that worth in 1 year. Backwards. In other words, you want to be able to take the whole lot out at the end of the first year. So in this particular instance, we've got this $100. We're putting it in now. It's going forward. That one's pretty easy to understand. You know, we put $100 in the bank now. How much is it worth next year if it's earning 10%? Okay. But let's assume I promise you $200 in 2 years, and you say, okay, well, you know, I'm wondering if I could get it a little earlier, or, you know, someone will buy this promise off me. How much would that be worth? How much would they have to pay me for that right to get the $100 in 2 years' time? How much would they have to pay me at that year one for that? So in other words, we want to be able to think about what is the value of that promise of $100 1 year forward, because again, this is the point of focus this year. This is the value we're trying to feel is right here. This is called the focal point. Very important concept in this thing is we need to be able to determine the focal point, and that's the value. The focal point is the value, is the date which we want to find the equivalent value of. Okay, so really this whole section deals with this sort of thing. We've got a couple of streams or 3 streams of money, and we want to be able to determine how much is that worth at a given point in time. And this requires some mental manipulation, and it also, like I've done here, requires you to draw it out. Let's just So let's draw up that basic scenario that I just described. So you have your $100 now. Okay, and we're going to draw a little timeline, and here's the 1 year mark. Okay, and keep in mind too, it's 10%. The rate of interest is 10%. So let's just look at this first half first. So you got your $100, you're putting it in the bank now, you want to know what it's going to be at that point in time. So that's going to be our, I'm going to call it part 1. Now the second part is, someone has promised to give you $100 2 years from now, but you want to be able to discount that back and say, well, how much is that worth if I were to take it and try to pull it out in the year? Because I asked, the original concept was, how much is this worth at that year 1 point, which is called your focal point. Okay, so we're going to call this part 2. And so we're really looking at how much is that $100 a year from the focal point worth. So the first thing we need to do is we take part 1, so I'm going to call this part 1. So we got this $100, you put it in the bank, it's earning 10%, and you ask yourself, how much is it worth at the end of 1 year? Well, that's pretty straightforward. All we're doing there is really capturing a future value, equals S equals P 1 plus RT. We know that's the formula for future value. S equals the $100, 1 plus the rate, 0.10 times 1. S equals 100, 1.1. SN equals 110. So we know that at year 1, at that year 1 part, our part 1 amount, in other words, that $100 that we put in, will be worth $110. It'll be worth $110. That's that. But we also know, we'll look at the part 2 now. Part 2, someone has promised us to give us $100 in 2 years' time. And we want to ask, how much is that $100 worth? Again, what we have to do is take it back. We need to get the value of it on the day of the focal point, which is in year 1, or at the end of year 1. So it's actually 1 year back. You're going to get this in year 2, so you want to be able to pull it back and say, what is the value of that? So in this case, we got to get the present value. The present value is simply the P equals S over 1 plus RT. And that S then is $100, that amount there. 1 plus R, which is 10%, 0.10. And the T, the time is 1 year. We're coming back 1 year. So in this case, this is 100 divided by 1.10. And 100 divided by 1.10 is 90.90. Or 1991 exactly. So essentially we've got two amounts. We got this $100 is worth 110 here, and that $100 that we're promised in 2 years' time from our perspective of now, 1 year from the perspective of the focal point, is 90.91. So we would accept an equivalent value of 110 plus 1991, which is $291. So in other words, those two values, the $100 put in the bank now and the $100 promised in 2 years' time, in the middle, or year 1, our focal point, that whole schmozzle is actually worth $291. That's an equivalent value. So we could take 200, if we could say, this would give us we'd be just as well off had we had taken $200.91 at year 1, as opposed to putting $100 in the bank at the front end, waiting for a year, and getting that $200 in 2 years, and waiting to get to that. We'll be able to pull that amount in. So that's generally how it works. Now I'm going to do some examples here. In order to look at this stream of equivalent values, we're going to take a look at exercise 6.5. And I'm going to look at number 1 first. Number 1 says, calculate the combined equivalent value 6 months from today of $500 due today and $300 due in 3 months from today. Assume the money can earn 2.5%. So that's our basic situation. The very first thing we need to do is to read the problem carefully to be able to draw a diagram, okay? So, calculate the combined equivalent value 6 months from today. That's important. So the 6 months from today. Write that down. I'm going to write down now. Okay, we're going to draw a little timeline here. So what we got here, 6 months from today, of $500 due today. So there's $500 due today, and $300 due in 3 months from today. $300 due in 3 months from today, and it's 2.5%. So what we have is we have a couple of streams of money coming in. This first stream, the $500 is put in the bank today. $300 will be done in 3 months' time. So we need to be able to say, well, what are we looking relative to? Well, relative to 6 months from today is the key point here. You look at that. What is the equivalent value 6 months from today? This is called our focal. And when we look at the focal point, that is the point on which we need to be able to look at these timelines. We got to be able to ask ourselves, can this, which direction are we looking at? Are we looking forward or are we looking backwards? What is the general flow of the dates? So first one, $500 is going to be put in, so we're going to say part 1 now. That's the $500. It's being put in now, and we can very easily find what it's going to be worth in 6 months. Okay, so in order to find what it's going to be worth, so we're looking at the future value of 500, so that's S equals P 1 plus RT. S equals the present value, which is 500, 1 plus R, which is 0.025 times, it's going to be sitting there. It's going to be sitting there in that for how long? 6 months. So 6 over 12 is the number. 6 months relative to our focal point. So we crunch numbers on that, and S is 506.25. So we can see that that's $506. So in other words, that $500 put into the bank today will be worth $506.25 in 6 months' time at the rate of 2.5%. So that's part 1. The part 2 says we take $300 and it goes in 3 months' time. So we everything is relative to the focal point. So we need to say how much time is between when we got that in there and the focal point. So the focal point is 6 months. The date that we put it in is 3 months, or the date we do it is 3 months. So there's 3 months. So what we need to be able to do is to say, what is the value of that on the focal point? So at that part 2 is the $300. We need again to be able to calculate, and we're going this way, so in this case we're looking for the future value. P plus 1 plus RT, $300 plus 1 plus R, 0.025 times, in this case it's 3 months that's in there for, 3 over 12. We do the math on that, and it will be $301.88. So in other words, that will accumulate, 300 put in there in 3 months will accumulate up to 301.88 in the 6-month mark. So simply then, seeing we're looking at equivalent payments, we're asking what are they worth together? Well, we just add them up. So when you add them up, it comes to 808.13. This is essentially what we're saying is that 6 months' time, $808.13 would be as good to us in 6 months' time as $500 now and $300 in 3 months' time. So this is what we mean by equivalent payments. And that, let's take a look then at the next one. Let's take a look at number 3. And number three, very similar in terms of it. We got to draw a little graph on that. I'll read it. Payments of $900 and $1,000 are due 30 days from now and 210 days from now, respectively. If the money can be invested at 4% with a single payment made 90 days from now is equivalent, what single payment made 90 days from now is equivalent to that? So we've got 2 payments, $900, okay, $900 and $1,000. This is here's now. $900 is due in 30 days. The $1,000 is due in 210 days. So we draw a little line here. Okay, so this is 210 days. Now we're saying it's earning 4%. What is that worth on day 90? So here's our day 90. And this then will be what's called our focal point. So we need to be able to consider the focal point here in terms of this, and let's just kind of see what we can do there in terms of this. Let's see what we can do with this. So the $900, first of all, it's going to be received earlier than the focal point. So we're actually looking backwards here. We're looking back in time for the first payment, and we're looking ahead in time for the second payment because the focal point falls between them. So let's just consider this for a second. $900. What will it be worth? Will it be worth more in day 90? And yes, it will. So we should get a higher number here. We certainly want a higher number here. So we're looking for the future value of 900 at the focal point. Then let's consider the 1,000. So the 1,000 is coming in on day 210. So we're looking backwards. So we'd accept a lesser amount. So in other words, we're looking for the present value of 1,000. Now the days are important. Everything is relative to that focal point. So let's take a look at the, I'll call this one case 1, and we'll call this one case 2. So in the case of case 1, we've got the $900, and we're trying to calculate the future value of it. So future value is S equals P1 plus RT, and in this case we've got it equal to $900, 1 plus, and the rate is 0.04 times, and we ask ourselves, how long is it? Well, it came in on day 30, and this is day 90. The focal point is day 90. So it is 60 days. 60 over 365. We'll do the math on that. That will be 905.92 if you do the calculations. Now let's take a look at case 2. In case 2, we had a situation where we had this $1,000. It comes in on day 210. We want to know what is it worth on day 90. So we're going to go backwards. So in this case, we're looking for the present value. And the present value is simply S over 1 plus RT. We know that the S is 1,000. 1 plus the rate, which is 0.04 times, let's see now, 210 day versus 90 days. So we take 210 minus 90 is 120 days. 120, 365. So again, the period is 120 days between the focal point and that point there. So in order to get the present value then, we crunch the numbers on that and we will get 986.97. Now, so what we do then is we're saying that that $1,000 is actually worth $986.97 on the focal point day. And we're saying that the $900 here is worth $905.92 on the focal point day. So we simply add the two together. So 905.92 and 986.97 is 1,892.89. In other words, those two payments on day 90, we would accept 1,892.89 as an equivalent to having 900 on the 30th day and 1,000 on the 210th day. It's not, the math is not hard, but this, establishing this focal point and establishing this kind of graphic in order to help kind of get your head around it is critical. So make sure you take some time to get that straightened away. Number five, again, number 5 says a payment stream consists of 3 payments. So in this particular instance, we've got 3 payments. And $1,000 due today, so we got now. That's $1,000 due today. $1,500 due in 70 days. From today. And $2,000 due in 210 days. And that's $2,000 due in 210 days from now. What single payment 60 days from today? So 60 days from today then is what we want to focus on. That's our focal. That's our focal point right there, day 60. Day 60 at 3.5%. Okay, so we got this. So what we got is we got some numbers to the right of the focal point and some to the left. So in other words, we need to consider what's future value and what's present value. Well, let's take a look. This $1,000 is going to be put in now, and we want to know what the future is at a future date, what the value of it is there on that day 60. In other words, we're looking for the future value of the 1,000. Okay, so I'm going to call that A. Okay, the future value of the 1,000. So in order to calculate the future value, that's P1 plus RT equals 1,000 is the present, 1 plus RT, and the rate is 0.035 times. And we ask ourselves now, how far is it out? Well, this is day 0, 1,000, day 60, so 60 days out of the 365. So S then is equal to 1,005.75. So in other words, that $1,000 is worth 1,005.75 on the day of the focal point. Okay, so I'm going to just write 5. Okay, so that's that. Now let's take a look at the second case. The $1,500 is coming along on day 70. Now we want to look at it relative to day 60. So actually we're looking backwards here. So in this particular case, I'm going to call that scenario B. In scenario B, we have to get the present value of $1,500. And how many days is it between the focal point and the day we're we're looking at 10 days. So we need to be able to calculate the present value. So present value is S over 1 plus RT. Okay, so we're going to take our S, which is $1,500. 1 plus R, and the R is 0.035. And the time is 10 days. 70 days minus the 60 days is 10 days over 365. Again, if we do the math on that, we plug that into our calculator, that will come out to $1,498.56. In other words, that $1,500 is worth $1,498.56 on day 60 because we discounted it back 10 days. Now, we need to do a very similar thing with this $2,000, so I'm going to call this scenario C. $2,000 again sits to the right of the focal point, so in other words, we need to get the present value of $2,000, and we ask ourselves, how far is it away? Well, day 210 is the date of the $2,000 coming. We're looking at it from the point of view of day 60, so we ask ourselves how many days it is. 210 minus 60 is 150 days. So we have 150 days out. So let's just put C down here. We use the present value, 1 plus RT. That's 2,000. 1 plus 0.035 times 150 over 365. And C will be 1,971.64. So what we've got is we've got three lots of numbers. We've got the 1971.64 that we just calculated for the 2,000 amount. In other words, it's worth 1971.64 on the day of the focal point. The 1,500 is worth 1498.56. Write that down. And I'm going to write that down. 64. And the 1,000 that we put in is worth 1,005 because it's 75. So we add those three things together, and the total is A plus B plus C. Will give you the equivalent value, and the equivalent value is $4,475.98. You got to get some practice with this. I encourage you to take the opportunity to do that. And that should do. Good. Thanks.